evening, cult members, and welcome to Pop Culture Cult. I'm Sean.
I'm Janice.
Welcome to our discussion, reaction, review, review
review
of The House of the Dragon. This is episode 7 called Driftmark. I did not set this all up correctly so we know all the names. Just give me 2 seconds while you all talk amongst each other. This episode had a ton of stuff in it. A ton of stuff. The lines are drawn in the sand or in the eye. Alicent shows her true nature. This is one of the most impactful episodes we've had or going to have, because it is actually the drawing of the lines in the sand. But it's also one of the most intense ones, because the first opening episode, the first part of the episode with the funeral of Lyanna.
Yeah.
The funeral itself is beautiful. The wake afterward, there's almost zero dialogue, and all kinds of shit is going on.
Oh yeah. There's, I mean, I've been to parties like that before where you're like, wow, this is super awkward, and everybody, yeah, it's just so awkward. Like Daemon and Viserys and Alicent and Rhaenyra
and the kids.
And the kids are all like, I don't know what to do, and yeah.
And Aegon getting drunk, and and there's a lot of visual verbal conversations where they're all looking at each other and they all are seeing certain things from certain points of views, and they're all taking that to an extreme in their own heads. And with that whole process, the tension just ramps up more and more and more for us as the audience members, but also for the people at the party, because everybody's starting to put 2 and 2 and 2 and 7 together about what's going on, including the kids.
Right, and this is the first time that all of them have been. I mean, Daemon was banished however long ago, so
right.
All of these people haven't been together in the same place, like, well before the kids were born, right? But now Viserys is, old and obviously, not going to be around a whole lot longer, and so yeah, everybody's kind of, there's a lot of mental chess piece, not quite moving yet. That happens a couple of scenes later. But there's a lot of taking mental note of where all the pieces are on the board right now.
And they do a really good job of so Daemon's kids, which are
twins.
The twins.
Bella
and that's Aegon. Where's the other one? Bela, and I can't find it. We should have them. They should be right here together.
I know.
Talk amongst yourselves.
Bella and she's not there.
Sure. Rhaenyra. It's right there. They're not next to each other. Them going and when Rhaenyra tells her oldest to go over and consult them that their mother is gone, he doesn't say anything, which I love. That, I mean, they're Bella's 10, 11, and Rhaenyra's oldest is maybe 9, 10, so they're fairly close in age.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know what to say. He knows he should say something. Mom told him to go over there.
Right.
But he also is aware enough to, like, he was the one who asked if Balon Strong, whatever his name was their dad.
Yeah.
He was the one that put it all together.
Yeah.
And so Stormbreaker, it's something like that. We're great with names. And in a show where all the names are like this far apart from each other, we're gonna be screwed.
Yeah.
But he goes over and Bela just kind of grabs his hand. There's no conversation between them.
Yeah.
She just holds his hand.
Yeah.
And that is even a line drawing in the sand moment of the Valerians are going to go with Rhaenyra and Daemon and the kids, and they're all
I mean, I think at that point you're just it's cousins,
Yeah.
But as we move on through the episode, we get more of the full spectrum of the families.
The family dynamic. At the wake, Rhaenyra stays away from Daemon, but they give each other eyes across the way. Alicent is aware of it. With Sir Christopher, who's given it to her. I haven't said it.
Kristen.
Sorry, Kristen's giving it to Alicent. I'm going to go with that until I'm told differently. I know she's not, but he's too faithful to her not to be getting something out of it. And we know he breaks his vows. So, and Viserys going to Daemon and saying, "Just come back to King's Landing."
Yeah.
Like again, like
yeah,
you're no longer banished. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Come back.
Yeah.
Daemon's like, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, we've said this before. A lot of this is Viserys' fault.
Yeah.
You can't just keep sticking your head in the sand and, like I said, whatever. It's not happening for 10 plus years, and now this is where you're at.
Yeah.
And you didn't stand up either for your wife against your daughter or for your daughter against your wife. You just kind of, la 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 la.
Everybody should be happy. We're all family. We should be happy no matter what.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go play with my little castle over here.
The Lego toy set is what they're calling it on the Casterly Talk. So yeah, it's totally.
Yeah.
Aemon goes and convinces Vhagar to be her next rider, and now he has control of the largest dragon in the fleet, and in the fleet. And that is Team Green. It's the High Towers now have one of the biggest and one of the most powerful dragons in the world of Westeros right now.
Yep.
And he comes back after claiming Vhagar.
There was a lot of screaming.
Viably so. Like, I understand the reason for it. He comes back. He walks down the tunnel, and Baela and her sister and Rhaenyr's kids all stop him and say, "It was you. How dare you take my mom's dragon on her funeral and whatever." And they have a bunch of preteen fighting.
Some bad at, like, there's some actual punches being thrown, some noses broken.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And I'm gonna bring it up because talk amongst yourselves again. Helena, no. No. Jason, no. No, it's Javeris.
Jacaris?
Jacaris? I think that's it. No, everybody talk amongst yourself. Anyways, the oldest of Rhaenyra's kids cuts his eye because he was gonna we all. I mean, we haven't read Fire and Blood, so we don't know from the books where the story is going. But everybody's talking like, okay, there's going to be a lost eye coming in the next episode.
Well, and we saw it in the previews.
In the previews,
got an eye patch.
So he loses his eye, which leads to the actual conflict of this episode,
right?
Which is Rhaenyra and her kids. Before we get to that,
I was going to say, you're missing a big thing that happened.
Before we get to that, Rhaenyra and Daemon have a long moonlight walk on the beach, talking about Rhaenyra, Daemon, their relationship, what their relationship could be, her infatuation with him,
and their loss too, and his loss of Lyanna and her loss of Strong, whatever his name was.
Right.
the actual father of her children.
I mean, I liked her conversation of Laenor and I tried. Like, we tried to actually do our duty and have children. We laid together, and it just didn't work.
Right.
And there was no pleasure in it. And I was able to. And then Damon's like, "Well, you found your pleasure, didn't you?" Like, well, yes, I did. On Casually Talk, they talked about this thing that Rhaenyra is the modern progressive person who is um, a gay ally and is really trying to progress the world that she lives into a better situation. She'll be the first queen by her own rights, and she has a gay husband, and she lets him do his thing, and she does her thing, and everybody is very happy. And Allison is the wants to live by the old ways, make America great again, like that whole kind of thing. And this conversation that Damon and Rhaenyra have, Damon comes to a full understanding of who actually this version of Rhaenyra is.
Right. I mean, she's not a child anymore. It's been 10 years, right?
Right.
And uh yeah, I mean, she's not like it's easy to when she, before when she was a child, she was a teenager, whatever. It's easy to say, oh, you don't know, you're not out there in the world yet. But
Right.
now she's lived. She's lived
Yep.
some poo. She's
Yep.
had 3 kids. She's been out there in the
And
world.
she's playing the game. She's playing the Game of Thrones.
Right. So now he can see that these thoughts that she may have had when she was younger, the way that she acted, because she was very free. Like she thought it was a lot of fun when they went out,
Right.
snuck out and they were watching all that stuff and everything. Well, it's easy to kind of push that off as, you're a child, you don't know. But now she's an adult, and it's been a while. She's experienced things, and she's still kind of that same person. She's still, a freer spirit. And so it's kind of easier for him to be like, oh, okay.
And Demon too has changed because of his times
Right.
being married to Lyanna and having the kids and living his life as a married person with kids. And he even says, like, she asked him, did you love her? And he said we were happy enough.
Yeah.
And not a lot of arranged marriages don't have that. And that was a big thing for him to say that even in the last episode, they had Lyanna and Damon had this big conversation about she understood who he was, but she still cared for him, and there may have been love there, both directions.
Yeah.
And there was a scene that got cut from the previous episode where Damon, after Lyanna dies, Damon is on the rooftop and hugs his daughters. And it shows a little bit of softer side that they cut out that I wish they would have shown because it adds to his character here.
Mm-hmm.
That he has allowed himself to be softer enough to see that Rhaenyra, John, it's Rhaenyra. I've been doing great the whole time. She is, again, this free spirit, but still has feelings for him.
Yeah.
And always has. And he, even though he was trying to use her in a way, he still has feelings for her.
Right. Well, and it probably makes it a little easier for what happens. Because she is an adult, she is experienced now, so it's not him taking advantage of a teenager, even though she is your niece. But this is what they do.
This is the Targaryen way,
right?
And so I'm not upset with it.
I mean, she's not your sister. I guess that's better.
That's better, sure. I mean, Aegon the First does. Anyways, so Aegon the First with the sister wives.
Sure.
That puts them all together.
Let's not go down that road hole.
So Aegon, and Aegon. Sex on the beach, never a good idea. Sand gets everywhere, of course. Anakin is right. So then we have the big confrontation in the Hall of Light, where they are looking over. I forgot his name already. Aemon's eye. And the scar will heal, but the eye is gone forever. And Alicent wants blood. And she fights and fights and fights. She was nice at first, but she kept pushing Viserys to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally it comes out that Rhaenyra's kids were called bastards. And that the fight actually came out of that. Now, nowhere in this conversation until later does it talk about him getting Vagar.
Right.
It's all about Rhaenyra's kids being called bastards,
Right.
and they have a fight over.
Right.
And so, because of that, it's actually out in the open in front of the court
Right.
and everyone.
Right. Viserys can't la 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 because everybody heard it.
Right.
Now he's got to address it, and so he's like, "Where did you hear that from?" Well, they heard it from your wife, and he knows that. I mean,
Right.
they're all looking at each other, but they're looking, like looking at her, and he knows it. He's still like,
I like what Aemon does though, because he looks at Alicent and then says, "Aegon told me."
yeah,
And so Viserys goes over and says, "Aegon, where did you hear this?" And he stands stoic, even though he was drinking the night before. But he stands stoic, and he finally says, "Just look at them. Everyone knows."
Yeah.
And he is speaking the truth.
right,
Everyone knows in the room except Viserys, who refuses to recognize it.
right. He
Which
knows,
Right, which is the whole thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that it was Aegon who said it.
right,
Even though Alicent has said it to him multiple times, he doesn't want to hear it from
Right.
her.
right. Well, and he's still not hearing it. He's still not.
Right.
He's still not hearing.
He's still not hearing it. Alicent, Viserys says this matter is over. We're done. It's done. And Alicent,
No.
he goes to walk away, and Alicent says, "No, I want equal damage done to Rhaenyra's kids.
Eye for an eye.
An eye for an eye." And you think I'm thinking in the back of my head, George heard that saying somewhere at something. He's like, "I'm gonna put eye for an eye in my book somewhere and write a whole scene around it." And then, but Viserys draws his line in the sand, which is on his own side of the sandboard. Not with Alicent, not with Rhaenyra, not with anybody else. He's just like, I'm going to stand in my little corner, play with my Lego set, and be okay.
Yep.
And Alicent doesn't have it, and she grabs the blade and goes after Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra, who actually has ridden a dragon, who's seen combat, she's not afraid of the blade, but she stops it. And they have an exchange between the two of them. And in that exchange, Rhaenyra finally tells Alicent, "Now everybody sees you for who you truly are." And then she cuts her arm. She drew blood on the heir apparent, on the princess, on the person, on it, and everyone saw it. You can't just talk about now in the background, it's not less rumor. Everyone saw it. It's known stuff, and she even says it later that I'm a mad woman. Everybody's gonna see me as a mad woman now.
Yeah. And that's true.
Right.
I mean, but there's, they show a scene or a shot in that whole exchange where the lines are clearly drawn.
Yeah.
And Daemon and Rhaenyra and the kids and all of the Valerians are all on one side. I was like, Targaryens, no, that's the other ones. Valerians are all on one side, and Alicent and Kristen and the king and Hightower are all on the other side, and the Valerians may not have been so clearly on Rhaenyra's side if Alicent hadn't done that. She made it very easy for people to pick sides right then and there.
Right then and there, and Corlys is the one who catches Rhaenyra in the fight after the fight is done.
Mm-hmm.
He's not Daemon, not the kids. It's Corlys.
Well, he's bound to her, sworn to her, whatever. Like Kristen is to.
No, Corlys is the Driftmark.
Oh yeah. Her husband's dad or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So the whole conversation they had earlier between Corlys and the queen that never was. There was name again. We're terrible with names. I'm really, really sorry. But they had a whole conversation about having Bella be the heir to Driftmark, and that she even pointed out to him that these kids aren't your bloodline.
Yeah.
But Bella is, and so now
they're twins. So was Bella born first? Like, what? How did they just pick
Right.
immediately? They're
Right.
twins.
Right. It was just an interesting kind of setup of like we had this conversation over here where it's like he's kind of a version of Viserys, but he's also open to new ideas. Corlys is
Right.
like he understands his son's desires.
Yeah.
They talked about it in previous episodes.
Yeah.
And that he would grow out of it. He would do his duty and everything.
Right.
And Leonor tried, like he did, but he couldn't.
Right.
It just couldn't happen.
Right.
But Corlys still is kind of like staying, like trying to ignore it. But now with all of this that happens, he's making a decision to protect his grandchildren.
Yeah.
And his grandchildren are not going to be attached to who are Daemons are now going to be attached to Rhaenyra, and the Targaryen and Valerian bond is super strong there now.
Right.
And so I just love that the Greens were on one side, the Blacks were on the other side. There's an obvious line in the crowd of they're on this side, we're on this side.
Mhm.
The lines have physically been drawn in the battle that's going to be coming.
Yep.
The next big scene is Viserys leaving. Otto comes to Alicent and they have that whole conversation, and Otto finally says, "I didn't know you had this in you. Now you're in the big game,
Right.
and now that you're in the big game and you have this in you, we can work together to win." Because it's always been about Otto winning,
Right.
and he's gotten played and outmaneuvered a couple of times, but now he's back on the board because of Alicent. And then Alicent pulls this off, and then Aemon pulls this off with getting Vhagar. So he got all these extra pieces that he didn't know he was going to have.
Right.
And now he says, you and I working together is actually a good thing.
Right. Except Alicent is just being played. I mean, she's been being played the whole time. She is not Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is strong and making decisions for herself, and is I can't say the player, because right now I don't see her physically moving the pieces around. But she will definitely be the leader. She can be the player.
Right.
Where Alicent is just like
Alicent's the chess player that just throws pieces out and hopes something happens. And Rhaenyra right now has not moved a chess piece.
Yeah, I mean, Alicent's not even, she is being played by everybody. And herself and her emotions, because she gets, she's all, she wants.
Because when she pulls the dagger, that whole thing is, how dare you not do your duty and do all the things you're supposed to do based on what the old world says that you have to do, which is shut up and be a woman and bear the men children. And that's what the whole show is about. That Alicent is jealous of Rhaenyra, that she gets a chance to live the life and for her own pleasure and her own wants and whatever, and she gets rewarded for it. And Alicent does all the stuff that she's supposed to do, and she's miserable.
Right.
And so she finally, after all of this time and having all this happen, it just finally comes out. And Otto is proud of her because Otto's a douche.
Right.
And so just that whole conversation with the two of them, and then Otto telling Alicent, just go to the king, be repentant, and just go, and he'll forgive you because he loves you, and we'll work on something later. And then they leave, and they take Vhagar. Edmund takes Vhagar, and they fly off into the distance. And while that's all happening, Rhaenyra and Daemon have a conversation and watching them leave, and they know that the war is coming because of everything that's happened.
Yep.
And so they have a conversation, and they do it in the Old Valyrian, which I really appreciate because that's their thing together.
Right, and people they can speak openly, and if somebody overhears them, they're not going to understand.
Right. And so, but they have a conversation between the two of them, and Rhaenyra says, now she's starting to move chess pieces.
Yeah.
She's like, if you're by my side and you're my husband, it's going to be harder for people to come after me for everything.
Right.
And he points out to her that means
you're still married.
And Laenor he has to be dead. And then they have a whole conversation back and forth about this has to happen. They both want it to happen because they both want to be together. But we have to remove Lenore off the page.
Right.
And then Damon goes to Lenore's boyfriend,
Yeah.
Harold,
Consort. Whatever.
his buddy, and tells him, just a quick death, and pays him off, and it's I'm going to say it's Harold and Lenore have a fight in Corliss's main hall chamber or whatever, and the squire runs off to go get the guards. He comes back, and when he comes back, there's a burned body in the fireplace, and it's got Lenore's boots and his chain. While that's all going on, Damon and Rhaenyra are getting married in the old ways with the blood oath, as old Valyrians would do it, in front of a maester and the children. And so there's this dichotomy between the two scenes, and they are now consummated their marriage. So I'm very interested how that's all going to happen when they go to Viserys and say, "Oh, by the way, we got married. Lenore's dead. Here's the Raven." Like I'm interested how Viserys is going to handle that whole thing, because
he didn't look like he was going to make the trip back. So.
I want to talk about that for 2 seconds when we get the chance. But come to find out, it was all a ruse to get Lenore free of the obligation that he never really won.
Right. Rhaenyra wasn't ever going to have him killed.
Right. Because she actually is a gay ally. She's a modern woman, and she wants her friend to be happy.
Right.
And
she likes him.
Yeah.
She loves him in
a much more platonic way.
Yeah.
But it was just like when the whole scene happened, I'm like, no, they can't kill him off. That's just shitty. Like it's just I don't want that. And then when he's getting on the rowboat with his head shaved with his boyfriend, and they have a ton of gold, and they go across the narrow sea and be happy.
Yep.
And that's
perfect.
That's really good. I want to talk about Paddy Considine. We've talked about him in the past. Everybody's performance in the show is amazing. I love what Matt Smith's doing. I'm happy whenever Damon's on the screen, and what Allison, what Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy are doing, picking up what it was laid down in front of them, and everything is just great. But Paddy Considine, like his slow decay in the makeup department, and him losing his hand and then his arm, and then this episode he's walking with a cane and struggling to move, and his hair's like he's just it's been a great visual thing for us to see, because Alicent really isn't aging, but Viserys is, because of everything that's happened.
Right.
And I'm sure he's in pain. I'm sure he's in anguish. And he also doesn't want to pay attention to anything that's going on outside of his little model set.
Right.
And so I really like what Paddy Considine is doing in this show. Lot of bells. Anything else you want to talk about?
Nope.
A really good episode, guys.
It was.
Let us know what you thought of this episode, our discussion and our reaction and our review of it in the comments down below. Please be nice. It's a requirement around here. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, and follow us on all the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Links in the description down below. And until next time, cult members, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.